And good morning. Good morning. I'm Chris McCarthy. Thanks so much for joining me this morning. As you heard, it's the fastest 2 hours in radio, so it's going to go quick. And we're going to do something a little different for the first hour. We're going to have a guest in studio, my friend Casey Tebo, who's in here. And I know we normally talk politics. We're going to avoid that if we can a little bit this morning, because Casey...
Talk politics and movies. If that's...
You can talk politics and movies,
yeah.
So maybe we'll get there. But Casey makes movies. He makes television programs, and he grew up 2 doors down from me.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 doors down, just across a dirt lane, and then another house, and enough to throw a rock though.
A huge gas line in between us, which turned us all into
insane people.
Morphed mutants.
Clearly, the gas was leaking into the wells.
You wonder. You know,
I don't even wonder anymore.
You know, it's funny. I talk to people from other parts of Mass, and I'm like, oh yeah, we're from Freetown, Lakeville, and they're like, yo, you guys down there, you guys are a different breed. And I'm like, yeah, something was in the water. Maybe it was that gas line.
Literally, something was in the water.
Right.
We have that forest. I once worked with a guy, and I mentioned something about the Freetown State Forest, and he was from Florida, and he came back. He was my sales manager. He goes, you know, there's a Wikipedia about that forest.
Yeah.
I go, yeah, I know. There's books and all kinds of stuff. He kept coming out of his office going, you gotta talk to me.
Yeah.
And
it's more extensive, I think, than people realize, because you and I know because we grew up there.
Right.
But you start getting into some of the books that have been written about it, and you talk to people, especially in law enforcement,
right.
guys that are older.
Right.
There's a gentleman I know from where I live who's chief of police, and he's like, oh, when I was in my 20s, he goes, the stories we heard coming out of the state forest, he goes, you wouldn't even believe the things we heard.
Right. It's crazy.
Who knew, right?
It's a very weird place. But so I had Casey in here because, well, first of all, I find him interesting. So it's my show. I can do whatever I want.
But you guys can't see that. He only finds me interesting looking.
Yeah, he is interesting looking. Actually, I don't think we have the cameras on.
I didn't know you had cameras.
Yeah,
Oh, gotcha.
But I don't think they're on.
Yeah.
Mike, are they on? No.
I look like a...
It might be on there. It might be on.
Like a fisherman from
Gorton's
Union
Fisherman?
Street. Yeah.
Gorton's Fisherman. So, Casey.
Yes, Chris.
You've been in the film business now for quite a while. You got your start with Aerosmith, right?
Yeah, it was. You know, it's funny. I actually thought about this the other day. It's being a filmmaker, and my friend Joe Lynch, who's a successful filmmaker, just made a movie called Mayhem with Stephen Yen from The Walking Dead, and the movie did well. And you know, he's still scrapping to find his next job. It's a tough gig, man. It's feast or famine. You're either, you know, my wife and I joke that it's like we're either living it up, hey, go out to dinner, or next day it's like, don't rent any movies, you know,
get away from that red box,
right? Because it's peaks and valleys,
right?
You know,
right.
And it's the industry has changed much with, you know, the digital age and downloads and content being, you know, sold and bought in different ways. But I like to think of myself. I wanted to get a tattoo that said -10 because I'm 43, but
right.
I feel like in my career I'm actually 33 because I spent a good 10 years really just wasting time living in Boston and, you know, chasing women and being irresponsible on my motorcycle. But you know that there's experience there,
right?
And then about 2004, so it's about 13 years ago, a girl that we went to high school with, Kristen Kaliga, who is now a very successful NFL sports agent,
right,
called me because I was doing graphic design at the time, and she said, hey, do you want to design some T-shirts for Aerosmith? And I was like, yeah, I would love to. So I ended up meeting a gentleman who was, I think, like their co-manager at the time. I never really got any clarity on that story. And I worked for him for a little while, and then one day he was like, because I had taken classes in college. It's always what I wanted to do. I mean, I know this is going to sound like a BS story, but in 3rd grade, I had Mrs. D'Antuono.
I had Mr. D'Antuono.
Right, and she let me put on a production of Return of the Jedi and like costumes and cast all my friends, and like that. Obviously, that was, you know, in my brain.
Steven Spielberg sued you, didn't he?
Lucas did,
yeah.
So I
took his Pez and his crayon.
You know, and it's interesting, too, where we grew up, a friend and I were talking about this the other night. We didn't really have access to much. You talk to other filmmakers or musicians, and it's like, okay, where'd you get your comic books? Where'd you go to the movies? I'm like, first of all, the closest movie theater was 25 minutes away.
Right.
There's no comic book stores.
Nothing.
We were talking about Mad Magazine, Cracked Magazine, the things that would influence you as a kid. And as far as pop culture goes, I don't think we got cable till we were like
in high
18.
School. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. I used to joke. My neighbor was a tree.
Right.
We lived way out in Freetown. almost in Rochester, and unless your parents were going that way, you weren't going.
No, we didn't go anywhere. And my brother Ben said something interesting too recently, which was we're the last generation of kids that sort of raised each other.
Right.
Like, as much hell as we raised.
Yes.
That's why you have all these interesting personalities. Because
Riding a bike 5 miles to get a soda was something I did.
Yeah.
To get a can of soda.
I think the closest thing we had was probably everybody's arcade, which was what?
5
maybe
miles.
5 miles?
Yeah.
We would go and
you're
play.
going round trip.
Yeah, right.
And Dennis would load us all up in the back of his pickup truck. We're also the last generation of kids who got to ride in the back of pickup trucks.
Well, I actually did that recently.
You put your kids in the back of your pickup truck?
Yeah, I did.
That's
And
awesome. Would you put them in goat costumes or something?
No, I had my son had a sleepover for his birthday party, and there was about 7 or 8 kids there from his football team, all 9, 10 years old, and they're all good kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like my generation, at least, is doing a pretty good job of hoping that their kids will be a little more respectable and not sort of entitled, like people say.
Right.
But anyway, I was like, come on, we're gonna go in the back, we'll get some breakfast. And like it was they had, and it was only about a mile, not even. And they all had the best time, and all the parents were like, they'd nudge me in quietly at football practice and be like, hey, that was really cool. Like the kids loved it. And it's like,
I don't think you can do it anymore.
I did get stopped by and one day taking my kids from the bus stop across the street to my house, which is about 1,000 feet. Environmental cop followed me down my driveway.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Long driveway, too.
He's like, you can't do that. You can't put kids in the back of your truck. I'm like, it's 500 feet. Like,
Right.
He wasn't having it, though.
We used to put 17 kids in the back of your father's
Right,
pickup
and
truck.
he would go like 60.
Yeah, right, down Route 18. Anyway, so you started designing because I want people to understand how you got into film. Because a kid from Freetown gets in the film.
Kristen introduced me to this guy, and I started working for him, and I was taking classes, and when I was probably 24, 25, I was like, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I need to make a change. So I started taking classes at Boston Film and Video Foundation, which has been gone for about 10 years now. It was a little school off of Boylston, kind of like almost right near Fenway, right above, it was Jimmy's Pizzeria. And they had like classes on everything, writing, editing, cinematography, directing, acting. And it was a really cool kind of boutique school. And I went there and just kind of learned everything. And I was working for this guy, and he was like, hey, we might have an opportunity to edit this little 5-song live DVD, and you can do that, right? And I totally lied. I was like, oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, I can, no problem.
It's going to be a theme throughout this, which I enjoyed. That's why I loved having you tell the story.
Well, what's funny is after becoming Steven for years, there's a song, I think, on the first Aerosmith record, which is literally Make It. And it's like, the whole thing is just, BS your way into it. Fake it till you make it.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, I can, yes, no problem. And of course, they literally walk in with like 10 milk crates of like beta tapes and VHS and like, here, start editing. And I was like, yeah, like I'm like staying up late, looking through books and like how to do this stuff. So I put the 5-song DVD together, and Kramer, who's the drummer, was the first one to see it. And he said something kind of profound. He looked at me and he was like, wow, you're a different kind of editor. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you obviously know the music. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you're showing parts of the band during certain spots in the song that are important. And I was like, well, why would I do it any other way?
Right.
And
because you play music, too.
Yeah. He goes, well, because people just don't do it like that. And I was like, oh, well, I thought it was important.
Right.
So then Joe Perry had seen it. He approved it. And I guess getting approvals through the band was really difficult. And then Steven had come, and he was really sick at the time. He was going through interferon treatments for hepatitis C, which he talks about publicly. So I'm not unveiling some sort of giant secret. He was really, really sick. And, there are people you meet in your life that you just hit it off with. Mm-hmm. There are people that you don't hit it off with, people you work with, people you come in contact with. And he and I, for some reason, just really gelled. And he was like, oh, you're really good at what you do. So this funny story. The first time I met Steven, I always try to be not starstruck when I meet somebody famous, because over the last 10 years I've worked with Katy Perry and Stevie Nicks and Florida Georgia Line, Lady Antebellum, Earth, Wind and Fire. These legends like Philip Bailey. Okay, I went to work with Earth, Wind and Fire, and I'm nervous because Easy Lover is one of the greatest songs ever written. Not to mention all the Earth, Wind and Fire hits. So I met Steven, and he was like, hey, come on upstairs. We're going to have lunch. And I'm like, all right. So there was this huge spread of bread and lettuce and tomatoes and all these organic meats and cheeses and whatever. And So I'm like walking down the line almost like a self-serve Subway, and I'm putting the sandwich together, trying to act cool.
Right.
And he's talking to me, and I'm making the sandwich, so it's like lettuce, tomato, turkey, cheese. By the time I get to the end of the line, I literally take a bite of the sandwich, and it was literally 2 pieces of bread and I think some mustard because I was so nervous that But over the years, it just kind of snowballed. He was like, "Hey, do you want to come on tour with us and just film everything and be our documentarian?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I started doing that, and then I was doing little animations for the big screens during the show, and then eventually it was. We went down to South America, and I ended up getting a chance to direct a live show for Velvet Revolver, who was opening for Aerosmith. And then the tour director quit. And
Velvet Revolver is Guns N' Roses, right? Is that
Guns N' Roses with the guy from Stone Temple Pilots?
Right. How's he doing?
Not so good.
No, he's
not
dead.
so good. I've heard some crazy stories about him. So the guy a gentleman by the name of Steve Dramalski, who's a huge production manager for like Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, sweetest guy in the world. The tour director quit and was going to work. Well, not quit. He was going to work with Metallica. So he called me and he was like, "Hey, we need to find someone to do the new tour." And I was like, "All right, well, I'll put some feelers out." And he was like, "Well, I think you should do it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Once again, something I've never done before. When you direct a live...
By the way, you can see us live. It is streaming on YouTube.
Okay.
Right now.
When you direct a live show,
Okay.
You're sitting in front of a switchboard almost similar to this, but there's 3,000 more buttons. Because you're cutting cameras and you're doing transitions and whatever. So the first live show that I directed was in Dubai.
Right.
I didn't take a course on how to use this thing. I had no idea. So I'm sitting down in Dubai. It's about 130. And the kid who's the show engineer, a kid named Ben Johnson, who is, LA based, worked for Neil Young his whole life, Godfather's Graham Nash. Nicest kid in the world, extremely talented and knowledgeable. Like the show starts and I'm hitting buttons and he just slowly looks over at me like, "You have no idea what you're doing."
Right.
And as the tour went on, I learned more and more how to do it, and the guys were extremely
But you had no idea.
No idea. No idea.
You've flown to Dubai, which is next to Saudi Arabia, right?
Yep.
No idea what you're doing.
Yep.
Beautiful.
No idea. So
That's a lesson for you kids out there.
yeah. So I mean, you do have to at least have some gusto and some wherewithal to have a little bit of talent, I think, but so the tour went on and I slowly got the hang of it. And then we were in Paris doing a huge show, and there was this big gag, which is like not a trick, but like something during the show. It's a big event. Like they were playing Dream On, and there was like this, almost like this Burning Man type of thing. And Steven puts his arms out, and it's a big moment. And just this one show in Paris, I totally like hit the wrong button, and it was like footage of a dog or something. And I got a call because Joe is like
Joe Perry.
Joe's kind of the leader of the pack when it comes to that band.
Right.
So awesome guy too. Awesome guy, awesome kids. The lesson in life, if you want to be rich and famous, like Joe or Steven, the one thing people, tell me a crazy story about Aerosmith. I'm like, the thing I admire about those guys is they all raise their kids to be great people. Like you hear these horror stories, someone like Michael Douglas's kid, Cameron Douglas, who ended up in jail selling ecstasy. It's like those guys did their due diligence to be good parents. So anyway, I come into Joe's hotel room, and I had just heard stories in the past of Steven and Joe being forgiving if you're willing to admit that you messed up.
All right.
Instead of going, well, the buttons were in French, and the thing was small, and somebody told me, like, instead of making excuses, I walked in and Joe's like, "You better tell me what happened." I go, "I totally messed up.
Yep.
I totally messed it up." He goes, "All right, cool. We'll see you tomorrow."
Nice.
Like, and that was it.
Right.
Like, because I admitted that I messed up.
Right.
So things just kind of from there, like, it was like, "Oh, well, can you do this now? Can you do this?" And then we worked on a Super Bowl commercial together. And then in I think it was 2011, they were doing a huge promo for. You telling me to wait a minute?
Yeah. We'll do this. We're going to take a very quick break. We're talking with Casey Tebo about his he's got a lot of stories about his time with Aerosmith.
Too many.
He's worked with Crossroads, which is a country music show. He's got an Emmy too, right?
Yes, I do.
An Emmy.
I won an Emmy in 2015.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll hear more from Casey. If you want to look at us, you can on Facebook.
Interesting.
Hey, good morning. I'm Chris McCarthy. Thanks for joining us. We have in studio with us Casey Tebo. If you'd like to look at us, you can on YouTube. Go to the WBSM YouTube channel. When you get there, also hit the subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything, and that way you get updates and regular content from us. So Casey's been telling us about how he got started with Aerosmith, how he was faking it till he made it. Now he's made it, at least at this point in the story.
Right.
And you just done a Super Bowl commercial, you said? Or you guys
We had a meeting about a Super Bowl commercial the band was going to do for Guitar Hero, and then shortly after that, Joe had approached me to direct a music video for the G.I. Joe movie. They were doing a song, and we were going to shoot it for Paramount. So it's like, they're like, all right, come up with a treatment. I'm like, all right. So I came up with a treatment.
What's a treatment?
It's kind of like a short version of a script.
Okay.
So instead of, if you have a movie script, which is 100 pages,
all right,
this is like 10.
Okay.
So for a music video that's 5 minutes long, you come up with like a 2-page treatment.
Okay.
So I came up with a treatment, and Joe was the one who sort of championed me. And it's a huge music video. I mean, we're talking like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we get to set up. I'm on the Paramount lot. This is like the real deal. Like you pull into the studio lot, they give you a badge and whatever, and you have.
It's like what I see on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Exactly.
All right.
You have all this money at your disposal, and we made this really amazing video, and we cut it together with footage from the G.I. Joe movie. And I had done it, timed it, so the edit in the video with this big screen in the back matched the actual music video. And it was one of those things where you sort of have to think outside the box. And some of the people were like, oh, we've never seen this before. And I'm like, well, I don't know how to do it any other way than think of my own way to do it.
Right.
So I'll never
So maybe not learning it, but having to teach it to yourself allowed you to be more creative.
Right. Yeah. So I'll never forget this. Aerosmith had all those videos in the 80s and 90s of like with Alicia Silverstone that everybody loved. Now, they were all done by a guy named Marty Callner, who went on to does a lot of big HBO comedy specials. The guy's a legend.
All right.
So I'll never forget, I finished the edit of the video and I sent it to the band, and Joe called me and said, and they had done a bunch of videos after that. They did some stuff with Michael Bay. And Joe called me and said, this is the best video we've done since anything with Marty Callner. So as a kid from Boston who loved those videos, I was obviously extremely taken back.
Right.
So we're in the color correction suite, which is like the last step of the video, getting ready to deliver it. And I think it was at midnight on a Tuesday in LA. I wake up Wednesday morning and I get a call, and they're like, "Oh, Paramount moved the G.I. Joe movie 6 months. So now you got to come up with a different story to match the footage of the band playing in front of a video screen with G.I. Joe in the background." I'm like, this is impossible.
Okay.
Paramount and Sony were like, well, we gave you, not me personally, but with the budget, we gave you a couple $100,000 to make this video. You got to figure it out.
Right.
And I remember talking to Mark Klasfeld, who's a huge music video director, and he was like, well, this is what separates, the great guys from the I'm like, yeah, but the footage we have is the band playing in front of G.I. Joe. Like, how am I going to fix that? Unless you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars rotoscoping the footage out. Right. So we ended up using a lot of close-ups and whatever, and I originally wanted to do this really funny story, someone like Will Ferrell or Zach Galifianakis as a roller skater who went to a roller skating rink like Hot Wheels. Yeah. And he sort of had to face these like 6 or 7 different icons of eras, like a disco roller skater, an 80s roller skater, like a heavy metal roller skater. And he was like this kind of chubby, overweight, didn't fit in his outfit. And everybody loved it. And then at the last minute, somebody was like, well, you should really make it girls, make it fun, make it sexy. And I was like, all right, I don't know if it's going to work. So we rushed this, like, there's this girl from the Spy Kids movies, Alexa Vega. She turned into a beautiful actor. Beautiful. She did the video with us, and we did this story where it was like she had this box and she was running from these evil roller skaters, and like she opened it at the end, and like it was kind of bittersweet because like Rolling Stone gave the video a great review. They gave me huge, they were like, oh, this guy's really good. But a lot of the fans were like, what is this? You don't even understand what this is. And I couldn't tell anybody for like 2 years later that, hey, this was in the original video is on my Vimeo page, and it's got the G.I. Joe footage in it. And it's light years better than the one we ended up with. So just one of those things you have to like,
improvise.
Yeah, exactly.
Adapt and overcome.
Exactly.
So you end up now you're with Aerosmith, and they're going to go to the do we call it the Orient? Can we call it the Orient? I don't know.
The Far
Asia,
East.
the Far East.
Yeah.
Right on a tour.
Yeah. This was 2011. We were down in South America, and it was a good time because the band. Look.
Did you go to Colombia?
Oh yeah.
Did you go to Bolivia?
We were in Bogota.
Bogota.
Yeah. Oh yeah. there were some guys there who took advantage of the local culture for sure. You know, it's like being in New Bedford and getting the best scallops you can, and
But
you
they're not scallops.
Yeah, exactly. It's another. No, I don't want to be crass.
No. Anyway, so you're going to the Far East?
No, we're in South America,
right.
and look, much like a family, when you're in a band for that long, sometimes you get along, sometimes you don't.
Right.
So this was just one of those times where everybody was getting along. It was just a good vibe. So I started filming everything, including the live shows.
Okay.
And we were getting ready to go to Japan for 3 weeks, and luckily my wife was nice enough to say, yeah, because I had 2 kids at the time. And, the Fukushima disaster happened.
That's a nuclear power plant, folks.
So management and everybody was like, all right, well, the trip is off. Like, we're not going to, we're going to come back with, like, Blinky from The Simpsons with 3 eyes.
Right.
So, like maybe a week before, they're like, well, now we're thinking about maybe going. We've heard reports that it's not as bad as everybody thinks, and if we take kelp pills and whatever, don't eat at certain restaurants, like, we'll be fine. And I was like, all right, listen, I'm down. I'll do it, whatever. So we went there, and I was filming everything and filming all the Japanese fans and filmed all the shows.
But what is it about? It's very interesting about Aerosmith in Japan.
They're the biggest band in
Right.
Japan, without question.
Right.
Without question. Bigger
You
than
say
the
it was
Beatles, bigger
amazing,
than the
right?
Stones. And look, I wouldn't want anyone in the band to be mad at me for saying that, but
Right.
that's what I witnessed.
Right.
They're the biggest band in Japan, hands down.
Right.
The Japanese still, to this day, they love American rock and roll. There are
Yeah.
bands like Mr. Big who just tour in Japan, and they make tons and tons of money.
Really?
They love American sort of that glam hair metal. So I filmed all this footage and filmed all the live shows, and then I came back to Mass, and Melissa was pregnant at the time.
That's your wife.
Yeah, and I just was like, you know what? I'm going to put a concert film together. I'm going to just do this thing. I'm going to put together like a 90-minute film of documentary mixed with live footage, and I'm not going to tell anybody, because the minute that I tell someone, management or Sony, they're going to go, well, we need to do it this way, or we're going to we want to, and it's like that. It's so many steps through the corporate minutia that you don't even want to deal with that.
Right.
So I literally finished a 90-minute film, flew out to L.A. The band was recording their new record, which was called Music for Another Dimension. I actually did the artwork for that album, the cover art. And I was like, hey, I'm here at rehearsal. And they were like, oh, it's good to have you here. What are you doing here? I was like, well, I rented a theater. I want to show you guys something. And I think they kind of knew something was up. And I showed them a succinct version of it, which was like maybe 40 minutes, because I just trimmed the live music down. I said, I don't want you guys to have to sit through this. So Joe stood up and walked over to me and was like, that was unbelievable, and gave me a hug. And then Steven was like, I can't believe you did this and you didn't tell me. And then we ended up selling it to Universal and put it out. And after that, it just kind of, it was the number one music DVD on iTunes and Amazon, beating out, I think, Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, it's incredible. What's it? It's Aerosmith in Japan? Or?
No, it's called Rock for the Rising Sun.
Rock for the Rising Sun.
Yeah.
And I've seen, it's funny because I'll be going through the cable channels.
Yeah, it's on Palladia.
And it's
yeah,
on, and I go,
yeah.
hey, Casey.
Yeah.
Casey's on. And my friends will say, I know you tell me every time you see that thing on it. And I go, oh, all right, I like it.
Yeah, that's funny.
But that was the thing. You said, I'm going to do this, but if I ask permission, you're going to get saddled down with all kinds of regulations and bureaucracy. You said, no, I'm going to do it and see what happens.
It's almost like, it's like I'm going through that now. I was offered, I did a movie, my movie came out last year. It was called Happy Birthday. It's a small little indie, but got a lot of great.
We're going to talk about that in a second.
Yeah, got a lot of great reviews and did a lot for me. But I got an offer recently to do this other small movie, and the people wanted to put in $1 million, which it's not a lot, but if you want to make an independent film, it's a pretty good budget.
Okay.
Happy Birthday had like $400,000.
All right.
And they're like, we want to make a movie. We're going to put in $1 million. I'm like, all right, cool. So what needs to happen is you guys just need to sort of let me do my thing, because I'll end up saving you money. I'll end up turning $1 million into $4 million.
Okay.
And like these people that tried to hire me, they just micromanaged every little thing. Like I was supposed to go to LA next week to meet with Tommy Flanagan, who's Irish actor. He's got 2 big scars on his face. He was in Sons of Anarchy. I thought he was perfect for this lead role. His agent got wind of it. He really liked the idea. He saw Happy Birthday, thought it was cool, wanted to meet with me. And the producers of this movie were like, yeah, you should wait. Wait till you get meetings with a couple different actors. And I was like, well, yeah, but I got to start meeting with crew, and I got to look at locations. And they were like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. So I quit. I was like, all right, forget it. Like, I'm not going to do this. Like, you want someone to build a house for you. And then they literally come in, and even before you figured out a place to place the sinks and the plumbing and the electric, they're going, No, that wood shouldn't look like that. The basic plywood you have there in the foundation, no. And
Right.
it's like, well, wait a minute, you've never built a house before.
Right.
You don't know anything, but you're acting like you have all the answers.
Right.
And that's extremely difficult. So with the Aerosmith thing, I was like, I'm just going to do this because I know it's going to end up being a huge problem.
Right.
So
you did it, and they loved it.
yeah, and it sold, and it was great.
Yeah. No, and I encourage people who like Aerosmith. It's really just a really interesting video and not
Yeah,
movie
it's really
take on it.
about that band and their sort of undying affection for the Japanese fans to go there during a nuclear fallout.
Right, which I think we sort of glossed over. There was a nuclear fallout, and these guys go, and they went because
the Japanese fans have been so good to them
Right.
for the 40 years. They're
Right.
like, we have to go. We can't
Right.
let. They just had a huge nuclear meltdown.
right.
Like, they need us to be here. Not in an egotistical way. It's
No.
like, dude, people need to get out. They need to get what's like after 9/11. It's like, you got to be with your family and be communal. Like,
Right.
and people want to take the subway and go see a concert. Like, we have to go there because we feel like it's good for everybody.
Of course.
No ego involved at all.
Right.
So.
No, that's excellent. So let's talk about your movie Happy Birthday. First of all, if you like the Goldbergs, folks,
Oh,
if you
yeah,
watch the
yeah.
Goldbergs
Yeah.
on TV. One of the kids from the Goldbergs is in your movie.
Yeah, he's the lead. It's so
The
hilarious.
movie's called Happy Birthday.
His hilarious because his name's Matt Bush. He's a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan. So he and I have been like texting back and forth. Because, Super Bowl.
So people who understand, who watch the Goldbergs, because I can't show them a picture here on
Sure.
the radio. Think of describing the elephant to a blind person. He's in the JTP, right?
Yeah, he's in like some crew. I don't watch the Goldbergs, but
All
I'm
right.
familiar with. He's in some crew of like kids.
The kids who hang around with the older brother.
Right.
He's kind of short, right?
Yeah, he's kind of timeless looking. He looks like he belongs in the 80s. You know,
Yes.
kind of.
Well, that show's about the 80s.
That's right. Big, interesting. Kind of big, doe-eyed, funny, quirky, almost like a Matthew Broderick meets Adrian Brody.
Yeah, he's a secondary character on the
Yeah,
Goldbergs, but
yeah.
he's the main character in your movie.
Yeah, I'm sure he's not minding those secondary character checks. That's
No,
for sure.
no.
The other thing people may know him from, and one of the reasons I cast him, is he did a huge campaign 4 or 5 years ago for AT&T. Was his mom rollover minutes or whatever, and like,
Really?
I was like, everyone's gonna recognize him from those commercials. Yeah, and he does a lot of commercials. We were literally last year at we're tailgating at the AFC Championship game, and a Burger King commercial came on, and like my whole tailgate tent is like, because they saw him.
Right.
And I'm like, you got to wonder what the other tailgate tents are thinking. These guys are cheering at a Burger King commercial.
right,
You know?
right. So your movie, for those people, you got to go out and see it. It's called Happy Birthday. It's got a cameo appearance by
Steven.
Tyler.
It's funny, too.
A lot of people at home don't know when you say Steven. They don't know who
Yeah,
that is. You got to
gotcha.
say Steven Tyler of Aerosmith.
Steven actually came to my house. We were working on this project, and my son had a couple of his friends there, and the mom's actually grew up in New Bedford, and she came downstairs and she was like, "Oh my God, what are you doing here? This is insane!" And he was there for a couple hours. We worked on the thing, and then he left. And I went upstairs, and the kids were like, "That was cool, that was cool." And I go, "You guys know who that was?" And they go, "No." I mean, Steven's a legend, but that doesn't mean he's penetrated the 5 to 11-year-olds.
Right.
He's not on American Idol anymore.
Right.
But it's interesting because Steven has this little part where he plays this kind of crazy drug dealer in Mexico. And when I proposed that idea, Gersh, who's my agency, was like, yeah, that's not good. That's not a good idea because he's so recognizable. He's going to stop the movie. If he's bad, people are going to talk about it. It's probably not a good idea. And I was like, all right, well, let me give him a shot.
Right.
And then when the movie was finished, they were all like, "Oh my God, he's amazing!" And he was really good, because you have to wonder sometimes, like, you take risks. He was not good in the John Travolta movie with Uma Thurman. It was the sequel to Get Shorty. It was called, I don't remember, but it was Uma Thurman, John Travolta, same kind of Elmore Leonard type of movie, and Steven played himself, and he really was not good. So I was worried about that, but I had seen him in another small independent film called Goodnight Joseph Parker, where he was awesome.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, he can do it. He just needs the right guidance or whatever. But he was great, and he helped promote the movie and got us into People Magazine and Entertainment Weekly. And most of the reviews, I would say 90% of the reviews, talked about how great he was. There was one or two that it's like, what's Steven Tyler doing in here? But, people have personal agendas that they put into their reviews, so there's nothing you can do about that.
Critics.
Yeah, it's
Critics.
interesting. It's
And
interesting.
A jackass can kick down a barn, as Harry Truman said, right? It takes a craftsman to build it.
Stealing that.
Yeah. And so just so people know, obviously you don't want to give away the movie and ruin it for people who want to go out and see the movie Happy Birthday by Casey Tebo. But tell us quickly, give people a sense of what the movie's about.
It's about a kid who comes home early from a trip, and his girlfriend is up to some unsavory acts, and his buddy's like, well, look, we'll go down to Mexico and forget all our troubles. And they go down there and stop partying, and they meet Steven's character, and they meet all these two kind of street hustlers, and they go to a rooster fight, and things just kind of unfold. They meet a couple of girls, go to a hotel room, and it kind of goes from The Hangover to almost like Hostel. But I don't want to. People
spins out of control.
People that are into horror movies, it's not a horror movie per se. It's really more like a psychological thriller. But when you're selling movies, they put horror on there, and I got a lot of blowback from that. This isn't a horror movie. I'm like, sorry, nobody's arm gets ripped off. You know what I mean? That's not really my style.
We're gonna take a very quick break. Casey, do you have a website people can check out? Do you do that?
No, you can just Google me.
Just
Casey,
Google
and the last name is Tebo, and that's pretty much everything will come up.
All right, folks. If you want to see what he looks like, you can go to YouTube and go to the WBSM channel.
My morning best.
We're gonna be back with. I like how you drew all that stuff on your arms just for the show. We'll be back. We'll take a quick break here on the Chris McCarthy Show. All right, and we're back here. I'm Chris McCarthy. We have Casey Tebo in studio. We're discussing Casey's movie projects, the stuff he's done, the stuff he's working on, the stuff he's going to do. I'm
looking at the YouTube link, and it's right below it is some gentleman in WBSM. New Bedford is the worst city to live in Massachusetts.
Some guy wrote that?
Yeah, and I disagree. New Bedford's come a 'long way, man.
And you still live locally, so people understand that. You still live locally.
Yeah. I live in Bristol County, and obviously spent a ton of time down here in my 20s and my teens. And New Bedford's a beautiful city. Actually, this movie that I got approached to do, I was going to try to shoot it in New Bedford because just the downtown area is so beautiful, and it's about a butcher. And I thought, if he's Portuguese, and it sort of ties into the whole city, and there's a lot of great crew and local actors you can use, but it didn't end up working out because if you shoot a movie in Los Angeles, a union movie anyway, that you can get better actors because they can go home at night and be with their wives and kids and husbands or whatever. And so maybe someday I'm hoping to shoot my next movie in New England.
So you can go home at night.
Well, the next movie I'm doing, I'm going to have to do mostly in Bulgaria because that's where the studio's facilities are. But some exteriors and stuff.
This isn't the movie you can't talk about because he's got a project he can't talk about.
The project I can't talk about is debuting at the Nashville Film Festival May 10th, but I can't talk about what it is yet.
Right.
I was approached over the summer to direct this kind of big action shoot 'em up, and I read it. It was by an English writer named Chris Bell, and I read it, and I was like, I think of my kids when I read scripts. Like, if I say that my kids are 10 and 8 and my daughter's 5, and when I talk to my kids about movies, I'm like, you guys want to go see Star Wars? And they're like, no. Like, they don't care. And let me tell you why. I'm pretty sure I've cracked the code on
All
this,
right.
okay? Have you noticed that most kids under the age of 14 don't wear jeans?
I don't look at children. I have no children.
Okay.
I don't look at children.
I have 3 kids, and anywhere you go, whether it's to a game,
I've seen you say this on Facebook, though. But go ahead.
kids don't wear jeans anymore.
What do they wear?
They wear jogging pants, Adidas, Nike, Under Armour. That's the new style.
Jogging pants. Quitters.
Yeah, but it's not
different.
like a Costanza thing.
Right.
They're actually kind of stylish.
All right.
Because kids look at jeans the way we looked at corduroys. That's what our parents wore.
Those
They
are
wore
corduroys
tweed pants.
yesterday.
We don't want to wear those. Kids don't want to wear jeans anymore. They wear these joggers, or girls wear tights or whatever.
Right.
So when you're trying to get kids to watch Iron Man or Spider-Man or Star Wars, yeah, those movies are cool, and they spend $200 million to advertise it at Burger King. However, kids are into Minecraft. They're into these games like Overwatch or Fortnite because it's their stuff.
All right.
When we were kids, we didn't want to listen to Leo Kottke or James Taylor. That stuff is cool now,
Right.
Because we're older and we can appreciate it.
I like Leo Sayer, but he was just on
We wanted
Muppets.
to listen to Van Halen and Kiss.
Right. That's right.
Kids nowadays, they want to listen to Drake or Lady Gaga or whatever. They don't want to listen to what we listen. They don't want to listen to Nirvana or Guns N' Roses. That's
Right.
our music.
Right.
So kids today, even you're trying to jam Superman and Batman down their throat. That's fine. They want their own things. So I read this script and I was like, okay, this is something I think that my kids would dig because I've never seen it before. It's got inspiration from other things, Die Hard or other fun shoot 'em up movies. But I was like, okay, this is something my kids would dig, and that's
All right.
important to
Cool.
me. So the process there is Chris Bell and I are sort of rewriting it now, and there's a studio that really likes it, and they're potentially going to finance this thing, and their facilities are in Bulgaria, so I would be there for a couple months. And
Have you seen the movie Hostel?
yes, but this is a facility. This
Right.
is like the Warner Brothers lot, but in Bulgaria, owned by a
kidding.
different company. So
No kidding.
they make a ton of movies there.
Really?
Hitman-
Because it's less expensive?
Yeah, well, they have the whole facility. They have facilities that there's sets that look like London and sets that look like Eastern Europe and sets that look like Paris.
No
And
kidding.
They just made a movie there called Hitman's Bodyguard, which was Ryan Reynolds and Sam Jackson. And you probably, if you're putting $30 million into a movie, you're really getting 60. And that's you can economics 101. You get into things like manufacturing and jobs, and I'm not really into that stuff. I don't even know what the word equity means. But if you have a factory and you're going to put it in the U.S., you got to pay more people. You bring it over to China or somewhere else, and you're paying a fourth of that. You're
Right.
going to make more money.
Right.
So if you're going to make a movie and you want to shoot it in Boston, and there's union fees and the hotels are expensive and the catering's expensive, you're trying to make a $20 million
the
movie.
mob.
You're going to, seriously.
I know.
You're going to make a $20 million movie, and it's going to turn out to be a $6 million movie. When you take $20 million and go to Bulgaria, you're going to get a $40 million movie.
Right,
So when
right.
it comes to somebody who's financing something, what do you think they're going to want to do?
Of course.
Of
course.
Yeah.
Of course. So, Casey, for people who, and we're talking with Casey Tebo, who makes films and children, 3 of them so
Yeah.
far. Casey, talk about some of the country stuff you've been doing.
I was in Colombia, ironically enough, 2013. And I got approached by this older gentleman, the most out-of-place person I'd ever seen in Colombia, kind of thin, older, Ted Kennedy, Tip O'Neill-looking guy, though much more handsome than those two.
And much thinner, obviously.
Yeah, obviously. And he comes up to me and goes, "Hey, my name's John Hamlin, and I'm a producer for CMT." And I was like, "Oh," and he does all the huge music segments on 60 Minutes. I mean, the guy's amazing. He did the one with Muhammad Ali and Lady Gaga and I think Elton John and Eminem. And he's done all the big ones.
Okay.
He goes, "Yeah, I'm an EP at CMT." He goes, "What do you think about coming up to?" Oh, he's I'm doing a 60 Minutes piece on Aerosmith, and I need some live footage.
Okay.
I was like, "No problem." So I sent him a DVD, and he called me and he goes, "Hey, that DVD you sent me was already edited. I just need some raw footage." And I was like, "Oh, well, that's my show cut." And he was like, "Well, that's really good because you do it on the fly. It's happening live."
Right.
He goes, "Well, how'd you like to come down to Nashville and direct a TV show?" And once again, another one of those things I had never done. And I was like, "Yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. Why not?"
Right.
And the first show I had done was the Avett Brothers and Randy Travis. And Avett Brothers are like a huge folk band, and Randy Travis, obviously, country legend. And I went into the broadcast truck, and it was the first time I had used a broadcast truck, and sat with an engineer and a script supervisor, and it went great. And they hired me to do, God, I've done like 10 since then.
Yeah.
So it was just one of those things that, I ended up working with so many different artists. Lady Antebellum a couple times. Thomas Rhett, I think I worked with 3 times. Jason Aldean. Casey Musgraves, I did a show with her and Katy Perry. I worked with the band Perry. It was ironic. It was like at one time in like a 3-month period, I was working with Joe Perry, Katy Perry, and the band Perry.
Nice. nice.
And did a show with
periwinkles that month.
No, but I would like to. I mean, I enjoy seafood, so.
Wilbur's Point.
Yeah, I know. What are those all those shells on the beach down there? What?
Periwinkle.
No, I think those are limpets.
Limpets?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Amazing Mr. Limpet?
My kids and I were down there last summer, and
Isn't
we were
that Don Knotts, the Amazing Mr. Limpet?
Yeah, periwinkles are much smaller. Limpets are kind of like a small clam, you know. But we so Katy Perry, Casey Musgraves, I worked with Bob Seger, Jason Aldean.
Well, I know the women who work here were very interested because they.
Oh yeah. I did a show with in Vegas with Florida Georgia Line and God, so many other different country artists. And one thing I've noticed with country artists specifically is they're all like literally the nicest people in the world. I've never really. Jason Aldean is kind of private, not exactly standoffish, but he's just kind of a private guy, which I can respect. But they are all the nicest, most humble people. Like when I work with Katy Perry, she's a huge superstar, and I'm sure that's a lot of pressure for her. But she wasn't exactly. She kind of came into rehearsal and was like, her manager cleared out everybody.
Really?
Oh my God! I mean, it was like me and 2 other people. She's like, who's the guy with the long hair? They're like, that's the director. She's like, well, I guess he can stay.
That's you she's talking about.
Yeah. And she let a couple of the producers stay, but like all the catering people had to leave, all the security had to leave. And it's like, I get it. But you know what? That just sort of projects like an air of that's not so cool.
Right.
You work with somebody like Steven where he's late because he's making a point to go around the room and say hi to everybody.
Right. Steven Tyler.
Yeah. So, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. We're talking with Casey Tebo. Casey, talk quick. Actually, what we'll do is we'll take a very quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about the Alfred Hitchcock project you're working on.
For sure.
All right. We'll be right back. Hey, we're back here with Casey Tebo on the Chris McCarthy Show. We're talking about the movie business. And the reason I have Casey in is because I want people to understand.
It's because I'm here to beg Maureen Boyle on my hands and knees to let me adapt her book into a TV series.
That is really why we're here. We want to make, because we've had Maureen on the show a couple of times.
Yeah.
Her book, Shallow Graves, about the New Bedford Highway serial killer. We want Casey to make that into a movie. This is all.
No, it's got to be a TV series.
A TV
because
series.
Maureen wrote the book in 10 chapters, and you literally have 10 episodes. I mean, it's perfect.
Right.
The only small thing that easily with a team of filmmakers,
We went so far as to
adjust.
kidnap her son and bring him
Yeah.
here to the
Yeah,
studio
yeah,
with
yeah,
us. He
yeah.
ain't leaving until we get a
The
deal.
only thing that's a little difficult, but it can be solved if you tweak it a little bit, is they never found the guy. And people, when you watch filmed entertainment, they like to have closure. You know
I
what
can't
mean?
say it on the air, but you and I both know I solved the case.
Don't say that.
I can't say it.
People will start calling us.
I can't say who it was because I don't want to go to get sued. Yeah, I know.
No, Chris and I have a joke of who we thought it was.
I don't think it's a joke anymore, though. I've convinced myself it's true.
No, but yeah, I mean, just such an amazing book, and I have no stock in promoting Maureen, but you do like to support local people, and it's like I got a buddy, my buddy Nick Correa. He's now working for Chris Herron opened like a rehab center for athletes, and I think it's like a high money thing, but Nick is the fitness director, and he's there to help people. So it's like you want to help promote people that are trying to do good in the community, and I'm sure Maureen will find her way onto a major network. But the book is just, I've never read anything or seen anything that Brotherhood on Showtime was pretty good.
Okay.
It's pretty close to that whole kind of Fall River, New Bedford gangster thing.
Right.
But Maureen's book, I think, is the linchpin for anything related to culture in Bristol County, specifically.
Is it amazing?
It's unbelievable.
I know.
It's unbelievable.
I've had an interview here.
On top of the fact that the lead investigator was a kid that we grew up with,
Right,
who
his
I
father.
spring breaked with.
His father.
And to read the book, and it's like she even gets into the details of like, oh, he was a state cop and his wife and his kids, and he played in this basketball league. It's like, that's the league that my father ran. So
Right.
obviously I have, I feel close to it.
He
but
went to the church that you were the only person in our neighborhood that didn't go to. When I was a kid, so people would say this, I thought
Thanks
everyone
for
went
that,
to church. We all went to church. Everyone went to church. And then the pagans moved into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And
we rode our bikes on Sundays going, where is everybody?
and we're going, how come those kids don't have to go to the house? How come they don't have to go get cleaned up and go to church? The pagans.
Yeah. So the Hitchcock thing.
Yeah, the Hitchcock thing.
So I was doing some work with a company in LA, a production company called Cross Creek Pictures. They produced the Whitey Bulger movie with Johnny Depp. They produced Everest, Black Swan. They've done a ton of huge movies. They saw Happy Birthday and they were impressed. The dad, who's the businessman, smartest guy I know, because he'll say to you, and that was one of the problems I had with this new movie I was trying to do, not the big one, but the smaller one. This guy and his wife, really nice people, but they're trying to micromanage everything. And you're not a creative person. You're a businessman.
Right.
So Timmy Thompson, who's the principal at Cross Creek, he would look at me.
They're oil people, right?
Yeah. Oil. They do oil rigs and repairs and stuff, not actually the wells.
Okay.
But I would ask him a question, and he would look at me and he'd go, man, I don't know nothing about movies. He's like, I leave it up to guys like you. And like, that's smart.
Right.
Because you're looking out for your money. You're not looking out for your ego.
Right.
So they had seen Happy Birthday, and he was impressed with what I did it for. So we talked about doing some TV stuff. And Todd, who's one of the sons, Todd and I came up with an idea to, because everything now is reboots and remakes, and I always loved watching the old Hitchcock black and white, Alfred Hitchcock Presents TV show. It's like a half-hour kind of Twilight Zone thing. We talked about kind of redoing that, so we partnered up with Chris Columbus, who's one of the biggest directors of all time. The guy owns Christmas. I mean, Home Alone, Gremlins, what else? Mrs. Doubtfire, Harry Potter. I mean, the guy's a giant. He's as big, not as big as Spielberg, but he's right there.
Right.
So we teamed up, and we went to a writer who's working on a pilot now, and it takes a while. That stuff takes a long time.
Yes.
I remember listening to Slash, who's been in Guns N' Roses most of his life. He produced a horror movie, and they were like, so what's next? And he was like, I'm not sure I'm going to do another movie. And they were like, why? He's like, because it takes so long to do everything. Mm-hmm. I wrote a science fiction script that I sent to my agent. I wrote a script, a really cool script, I thought.
Right.
Sent it to my agent about 2 years ago, and I go, hey, what'd you think? He goes, I think it was terrible. He goes, what else do you have? I said, well, I have this science fiction thing. And I sent it to him, and he goes, this is great. We can get this made.
Okay.
But it's been a year and a half. We found a producer. We have to start going out to actors. Like, we found locations. Like, it just takes forever. So if you don't have patience,
right,
not the right business for you, man. No. Go do something that's instant gratification.
We only have a very short amount of time left, Casey, but I think the message that you're telling people is you're a kid from Freetown, you still live in Bristol County, yet you're going around the world, you're doing all this stuff, and it's because you just tried, right?
Yeah.
And you lied a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, why not?
Yeah. Said, hey, I can do this. You gave it a shot.
I just think that, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of craziness there. I'm sure my wife, isn't happy with some of that, where it's like you sort of just have a little bit of that daring attitude to try things and make it work. And, you have to – listen, man, I honestly think the key to happiness in life is finding something that you enjoy doing, because otherwise you're going to be sitting at a bank. No offense to anyone who works at a bank, but if you don't like doing that – oh, we just got cut off.
No, you didn't.
Oh, if you don't like doing that, you're going to be miserable.
Yeah, rob the bank. Don't work at the bank.
Sure, why not?
Be daring. I'm just kidding, folks. That's not a career track. Folks, we'll be back with another hour. We'll take your calls, 508-996-0500. Thanks so much for joining us, Casey.
Anytime.
All right.